Live from the City Building in Athens, Ohio, your local source for live city meetings, TGC 15 presents Athens City Council.
Good evening. Welcome to Athens City Council. Tonight is Monday, October 20th, 2008. It's on or about 7:30 p.m. This evening, City Council is meeting in regular session, and we do have a quorum with all members present. Next item on our agenda is disposition of minutes. Can I have a motion to accept the minutes from the regular session held October 6th and the special session held October 13th, 2008?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Motion and a second. Further discussion. All in favor of accepting the minutes?
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes have been accepted. Under communications, Member Sands.
Mr. President, I move that we accept the auditor's reports for the month of September. They have been placed in the council chambers and they have been emailed to all members.
Further discussion. All in favor of accepting the, is there a second? I'm sorry.
Second.
Is there further discussion? All in favor of accepting the auditor reports?
Aye.
Opposed? The reports have been accepted. Member Nisley.
Yes, Mr. President. Last week, City Council members and the community heard about a program called Walk a Mile in Her Shoes, which is going to be an event held on November 9th. And it's the university students working to raise money for a local community organization called My Sister's Place. There would be some costs affiliated with that, with police coverage as they walked on the city streets. We can work with a reduced amount of approximately $400. Unless I hear objections from other council members, my plan is to bring up next, at the next council meeting session 2 weeks from tonight, an ordinance to waive that $400, which we have done on previous other occasions for nonprofit community organizations.
Very good. Are there any other communications? Thank you, Member Nisley. Reports and communications from other elected officials. Mayor Weil.
Really not much to report about. We are looking for volunteers for the safety team, Halloween safety teams, as always. And there will be that wellhead protection training, I think the 23rd, for residents in the wellhead protection area, which would be Ward 1 on the west side of town. And I have nothing else, really, unless you have other questions.
Questions for the mayor? City Auditor Kathy Hecht. Oh, I'm sorry. Member Kuhn.
Could you explain a little bit what the safety committee people would do for Halloween?
Halloween safety teams?
Or safety teams?
Essentially, they're volunteer citizen teams that essentially walk around using groups of 3 to 4. I've done a few of them. Majority of the time, you're telling out-of-towners where the party is or how to get home. If they're lost, some information of where to find their friends in some cases. Some of the other time is just if you're in the neighborhood areas. For instance, last year I was in Mill Street, and a lot of my time was just telling the people that that to take that open drink and move back onto the lawn rather than on the sidewalk. It's really just letting them know and being a presence. And as I say, it's nice to carry a map so you can always tell them how to get home or where to find their friends. And usually that's about it, really.
And do you wear a vest so people will know?
Yeah, we get usually jackets. I know Chris Nisley's done it a few times. They give you a nice safety team jacket and a flashlight and things like that.
And you're, correct me if I'm wrong, you're in teams of 4, 5 sometimes?
Yeah,
or?
yeah. It usually breaks out at least 4.
Okay.
Usually with somebody from the city and then various other people to cover it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Further discussion. City Auditor Kathy Hecht.
I do have my revenue budget projections.
Thus begins the budgetary process.
There we go. Stand up here if you don't mind. I did hand this out, but I put the report on one page for you. I apologize for the very small print. Mine is bigger, so I can read it. Looking first at the general fund, the city income tax is the main source of revenue. As of September 30th, tax receipts were up 3.4%. That translates into about $225,000. 74% of that goes into the general fund. Keep in mind that last year at this time, tax receipts were up to 3%, but we ended up with a total increase of only 2.5% for the year. I expect that to happen again this year, although we are bringing in some delinquent tax revenue with help of the prosecutor's office. As for projections for 2009, I would expect our income tax revenue to increase slightly and the total increase for the year to be about $200,000, maybe $220,000. But that's what it's been since 2006. It's been right around $200,000, which is good that it's increasing, but in the big picture of our budget, $200,000 is not a lot of money. My preliminary review projections show a decrease in total revenue next year. This is not all bad. Some of that has to do with debt reduction. When we roll over a note, it's booked as revenue, so when we pay money down, the revenue from the new note is less. We paid off the parking garage note this year. We paid down another $200,000 on East State Street note, made scheduled OWDA and community center payments, and this week we will be paying down $400,000 on a $500,000 note in the sewer debt fund. I had made the suggestion last year, although it didn't happen, so I'd like to bring it up again this year, that we transfer the Carriage Hill Booster Fund revenue to water debt. It's about $53,000 right now. That would help us pay off the $200,000 short-term note that we still have outstanding in the water fund. As for other revenue affecting the general fund, most of the sources will remain flat, such as parking and parking tickets, developers' fees, and rental permits. Rental permits could go up with the Summit at Coates Run. Interest rates will certainly drop, probably below 2%, which would be down from 3.5% this year. Keep in mind that the interest revenue affects most of our funds, not just the general fund. Although we are all aware of the property tax evaluations going on, I don't see that as bringing in an appreciable increase next year. Our property tax revenue for this year is the same as last year. It had increased about $40,000 each year in 2006 and 2007. While our estate taxes were very high in 2008, I doubt that we will be that lucky next year. Either way, it is not something we can count on. No, they were extremely high. It's the highest, yeah.
Some really rich people died.
Be nice, yeah, I know, that's exactly how we get that, so
We
it
can
would be
only hope
nice.
for the same in the future.
Yeah, I don't want to say that, but some other fun highlights. In tourism, with travel down and no new hotels planned, I don't expect an increase in revenue there. In the street fund, the state gas tax is down slightly this year and will probably remain flat next year. The gas tax is based on gallons, not the price of the gas. Recreation and community center funds are steady. Although I was worried about revenue in these funds last year, changes in personnel have helped reduce their expenses this year. As with all of the other funds I've discussed, their revenue budget will likely be flat next year. They'll be able to hold their own. And I also think our new director is pretty good at watching the budget and keeping things under control. Finally, the sewer fund. It seems to be in good shape. The changes made this year and the way we post the revenue have made a huge difference in the budgeting of funds and payment of debt. Also, steadily increasing rates is extremely important. My total revenue projection for 2009 at this time is $29,525,742 plus carryover. I had projected $32,207,976 at this time last year. This is very conservative, as our total appropriations for this year are $35,375,378. But I'm not inclined to overestimate revenue in light of the current economy. Last year, the total carryover was $6,600,897. Sorry, it's very difficult for me to predict carryover at this time. This year, the carryover in the general fund was $1,144,000, but I expect that to be cut in half this year. I will, of course, be watching the budget closely throughout the remainder of the year. Are there any questions?
No questions for the auditor? Thank you very much for the report.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kate.
Law Director Patrick Lane.
Thank you, Mr. President. If you'll indulge me, I'd like to take a few minutes to speak tonight in the spirit of teamwork. One of my favorite things about being in local government is how close we are to the people. We know who they are, we see them at Kroger's, and so it's very easy for government to be able to respond to the needs of the constituents. In a larger setting, a national or a state government, for instance, it's much harder to do that. A legislative body may pass a law at a national level that ended up having some unforeseen consequences or some results that really no one could have seen coming. It's very difficult to go back to Congress, for instance, and say, what did you mean in this part of the law that you wrote right here, or can you fix this other part of the law? Here in local government, we can easily re-examine a law that isn't working, and so tonight I'm going to speak briefly about the landlord-tenant forms. And frankly, I need guidance from City Council about what you would like to do with this. This law, passed in 2005, makes it a minor misdemeanor criminal offense for a landlord to fail to have a current landlord-tenant form on file with the code office by September 30th. Now that's in 2005. I came into office in 2008, and during that time, in between those two times, the law had been totally unenforced. So recently I had made an announcement that we were going to attempt to enforce this law, and I had asked the code office at the time for a list of all of the landlords that were out of compliance. And the code office responded by giving me a list with 143 landlords on it. We sent out letters to these landlords, and of them, of that group, there are still 50 that are currently out of compliance. Now, just a couple of weeks ago, or within these last couple weeks, I was notified by the code office that there are now an additional 284 landlords that are out of compliance for this year. So big picture right now, we are looking at 334 landlords without a current form on file. And ladies and gentlemen, these landlords comprise 965 rental properties here in the city of Athens. Now, I'm a prosecutor by trade. I've been a prosecutor longer than I've been a law director. And when you have a law that isn't being followed by literally half of the people, I think it's appropriate to question whether this is a problem with the people or whether there may be a problem with the law. The law makes it a criminal offense to fail to have one of these updated forms on file. It's not a civil citation, it's not a ticket, it's a criminal offense. And I'm telling you guys, you should see the list of people that are on this list. I'm telling you, they are your friends, they are your neighbors, they are current and former elected officials. There are even 3 churches that are on this list. Now surely, for some or many of these people, it may be an oversight, maybe they didn't know they needed to file one of these forms, maybe they forgot. But even if we now send letters to this new batch of people that we've been given by the code office, based on the response rate of the previous mailing, we can estimate that we're going to be looking at least, at the end of the day, 150 landlords and over 500 properties that are out of compliance. And that's 500 criminal charges here in our municipal court. Now, I have some serious questions as to whether this was City Council's intent when it passed this law that such an outcome could have been possible. And purely as a practical matter, who do we charge with a crime in a situation where a property may be owned by some other entity or by a corporation? Are we charging the board or the CEO or the property manager? Who are we charging in the situation where the church owns the property? So, in short, I believe what we have is to a large extent, a broken law. And I speak tonight in the spirit of teamwork to try to help council to achieve the goals that it had in mind when it passed this law. It seems to me that our options are, one, we could go forward with the law as is currently written, and we can charge these 500 crimes, or we can use this experience as an opportunity to address the issue to see if perhaps there's not a way we could fulfill the goals of trying to inform tenants of their rights and responsibilities, but to do so in a more effective way. And I, for one, am certainly happy to help with that in any way I can. Thank you.
Thank you. I was asked to come to the Law Director's office this evening to discuss this issue, and I think probably the best way to handle this at this point is to forward it on to Community Issues Committee. Is that? No.
Don't want to.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Put us down for one.
Okay. So if there are questions for the Law Director, we will add that to the next agenda of the Community Issues Committee. Thank you for your report.
President,
Yes.
I will say, I do believe
Sands.
there's a good deal of discussion to be had about this, but I'm reluctant to start it now in this venue. But we will have a an open discussion next week.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you.
In as much as it's a broken law, we don't have to really do it next week. We have other things to start on the budget. We can wait a few months. I mean, nothing's going to happen, so. It would be good to always discuss it and then move from there.
Ordinances for third reading. Ordinance 10408, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into agreements with University Courtyard and McDonald Transportation to provide bus service to the apartment complex and declaring an emergency. Member Nisley.
Mr. President, I move for approval of ordinance 010408.
Second?
This ordinance would allow the city to work in an agreement with McDonald Corporation, that is the company that provides the bus service to the apartment complex to University Courtyard.
Is there further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of ordinance 10408?
Aye.
Opposed? The ordinance is adopted. Ordinance 10508, an ordinance authorizing design engineering of a new salt bin, project number 242. Member Bain.
Mr. President, I move adoption of 10508.
Second.
10508 is an attempt to solve a problem that we have in the service garage area. I consider it to be a temporary problem, but temporary in today's world may mean a decade or so, maybe changes in the use of salt. You hear people talk about that. But fundamentally, the salt that we have is, it needs to be contained. Did I not move to adopt?
Yes, you did. You did move.
Okay, thank you. I
Is
heard
there
the
further
noise down
discussion?
there.
All those in favor of adoption of ordinance 10508?
Aye.
Opposed? The ordinance is adopted. Ordinance 10608, an ordinance authorizing the purchase of chlorine, fluoride, salt, caustic soda, and sulfur dioxide. Again, Member Bain.
Mr. President, I move adoption of 10608.
Second.
10608 is an ordinance authorizing for next year, purchase for next year of the materials that we use, each and every one of them in our processes for water treatment, swimming pool work, wastewater treatment, that would be the sulfur dioxide, and also street salt. I believe that we have tried to seek the best possible price on salt. That seems to be the major problem in today's world. One of the few things that is extremely high right now in price. So we're doing this early to get the job done and trying to get it out to the contracts in place.
Is there further discussion on ordinance 106? All those in favor of the ordinance?
Aye.
Opposed? The ordinance is adopted. Ordinance 10708, an ordinance amending ordinance 03908, accepting a limited warranty deed from Athens 08 LLC, Holzer Clinic. Member Phillips.
Mr. President, I move adoption of 010708.
Second?
This ordinance, as we discussed previously, is just cleaning up earlier ordinances that we discussed. This is the right-of-way for that access road. Want to reiterate once again that we are not spending any city tax money on this project. This is being funded through grant funding and by Holzer Clinic. We're just accepting the public right-of-way so that it can be a public road. ODOT needed legal descriptions for these rights-of-way, and so these next series of ordinances are adopting the correct legal descriptions for the rights-of-way.
And as this has been discussed several times, and the next four ordinances basically are saying the same things, let's see how quickly we can get through them. All those in favor of adoption of ordinance 10708?
Aye.
Opposed? The ordinance is adopted. 10808, an ordinance amending ordinance 04008, accepting a perpetual easement from Hocking River Properties Limited to the City of Athens for the construction of an access road to Holzer Clinic and adjacent businesses. Again, Member Phillips.
Mr. President, I move adoption of 010808.
Second?
This is the second of those ordinances that we just described.
Is there further discussion? All those in favor of adoption?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ordinance is adopted. Ordinance 10908, an ordinance amending Ordinance 04108, accepting a perpetual easement from R Future Development Limited to the City of Athens for the construction of an access road to Holzer Clinic and adjacent businesses. Member Phillips.
I move adoption of 10908.
Second.
This is the third of those ordinances.
All those in favor of adoption of the ordinance?
Aye.
Opposed? The ordinance has been adopted. Ordinance 11008, an ordinance amending Ordinance 04208, accepting a perpetual easement from Sarigi Motel, Inc. to the City of Athens for the construction of an access road to Holzer and adjacent businesses. Member Phillips.
Mr. President, I move adoption of 11008.
Second.
This is the last of those right-of-way ordinances.
Further discussion. All those in favor of adoption?
Aye.
Opposed? The ordinance has been adopted. Ordinance 11108, an ordinance amending the 2008 appropriation ordinance and authorizing an interfund transfer to provide the city's local match for the Community Housing Improvement Program. Member Sands.
Mr. President, I move adoption of ordinance 11108.
Do you have a second?
Second.
This ordinance is actually approving an interfund transfer from our CDBG revolving loan fund, $100,000 being transferred to the CDBG fund for our CHIP program, our Community Housing Improvement Program, which will actually be effective next year, 2009. But the city has been awarded a grant for $215,000 from the CDBG funds to run this program, but a caveat of that grant was that we have a match of $100,000 coming from our revolving loan fund. The state likes to see the money revolving in that loan fund.
Is there further discussion on ordinance 111? All those in favor of adoption of the ordinance?
Aye.
Opposed? The ordinance has been adopted. Now on to ordinances for first reading, none for second tonight. Unusual. Ordinance 11208, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise and accept bids for necessary and enter into contracts to replace the air conditioning system in the Law Administration Building. Member Sands.
Mr. President, this ordinance does pretty much what it says. The Law Administration Building next door, the chiller in the air conditioning unit has been giving them continual problems, and the contractor has decided it needs to be replaced. There is a fund that has been set up to deal with improvements at the law building, and we estimate an appropriation of about $45,000 from that fund to cover this work.
Is there further discussion on ordinance 112? Ordinance 11308, an ordinance amending the 2008 appropriation ordinance. Again, Member Sands.
Mr. President, at this time, I move it, I ask that we consider ordinance 11308 under suspension of the rules.
Second.
This ordinance contains several transfers of money that are necessary for various funds to pay their bills for certain products, certain services and products that they need for the end of the year.
Is there further discussion on suspension only? All those in favor of suspending the rules on ordinance 113?
Aye.
Opposed? The rules have been suspended.
Mr. President, I move adoption of ordinance 11308.
Second.
This ordinance has several things happening. First of all, it's asking to appropriate $115,000 from the unappropriated balance of the general fund to the sewer fund. The sewer fund needs this to pay for the electricity to run the sewer plant through the end of the year, and also for an internal service fund transfer that you'll see later in the ordinance. Also, $114,400 to the water fund for electric, natural gas, fuel, and chemicals that Member Bain mentioned are utilized through the end of this year, 2008. These are all transfers to cover fuel charges through the end of the year. $14,450 to the general fund 101. I'm not sure what that one is, auditor. Transaction plus 200, 300. I don't know what fund that is.
That would be general fund, that would be both lands and buildings, other administration, law offices, I think, anything in
I think
101.
the police department needs some.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
I could dig it out, but.
Okay, that's fine, thank you. And then further broken down is $20,550 to the street fund, $1,950 to the recreation fund, $200 to the garbage fund, and $3,350 to that internal service fund transfer, for the internal service fund, and the transfer from the sewer fund will allow that to happen. And these are all fuel charges through the end of 2008. Member Bain?
I think it's good to underline for all of us that we are going into, I guess if we don't know it, you haven't been listening to the news, a very tough time. We can see it already. Just to finish the year, we're kind of eating into our carryover with this. And to waste money anywhere is probably tragic, and we can see that electric is up by $100,000 in some funds. We have to keep the processes going, and if we don't prepare next year, we're going to have probably 1.5 times the electric costs. We've got to do something different. It seems that just like we would at home, you have to, and it's not turning off the lights. There's probably more to it than that. I applaud the efforts toward the green buildings, trying to find where the leaks are to keep the heating down, but there are certain fixed costs, and this is one of them, and they are going up rapidly, and it's not going to be easy in the near future for us, I don't think.
Absolutely. And
So I'm the doom person, gloom person. He's the happy guy.
Just a real downer.
I know. I can't help it.
Is there further discussion on ordinance 11308? All those in favor of adoption of the ordinance?
Aye.
Opposed? The ordinance has been adopted. On to ordinance 11408, an ordinance authorizing the auditor to reduce year-end appropriations. This is that weird thing.
Yeah, this is that weird thing, but it does exactly that. This is an ordinance authorizing the auditor to reduce year-end appropriations. Some of these appropriations, we're pretty close on these, but there are other appropriations that were estimated at the beginning of the budget year, and not all those appropriations, that money appropriated, will be spent. The state auditors don't want that to stay in the fund. They want our local auditor to reduce those appropriations at the end of the year. A couple years ago, we did this by minute details. This authorizes the auditor's office to take care of those minute details.
No suspension needed.
No suspension at this time. Okay. Any questions? Ask the auditor, please.
Ordinance 11508, an ordinance amending ordinance 015107, authorized staffing levels and declaring an emergency. Member Bain.
Oh, Mr. President, 11508 is probably part of the doom process going on. Actually, a goodly number of these were not budgeted last year. We've been in a little bit of cutback recently, but we are proposing with 115 to permanently reduce certain positions in the staffing ordinance. We will certainly go over the non-union ordinance later on to talk about the rest of it, but one of the first things we see is that we're going to cut one general secretary in code, leaving an administrative assistant. A second thing we're going to do is cut on recreation, in the recreation department, a three-quarters-time assistant director, and I don't know where the other 25% of this person is. I hope we find, oh yes, we can see down below, there's not 1 1/4 person down in the other assistant position, just a 1. Okay, so that's deleted, and the other one is changed to a 1. We have, in the street department, I guess that was a previous one, I can skip that one. Anyway, these are reductions in staffing in the non-union ordinance going forward. Those are all new too? Okay, I'll go back over it. I wasn't expecting to, I would much rather have done the auditor's thing myself, but okay. So we have the firefighter numbers also going from 18 to 16. We have not funded that position, but we do not have enough money to fund 2 additional bodies in the fire department. Street maintenance, tech/trainee/labor, we're down to 11. And community center, we already talked about that one. So those are the proposed changes in the staffing ordinance. I suspect there will be some other things later on, but this is a real and true reduction of the FTE in the city of Athens, and here we are talking about it in October. First reading. Things are tough.
Yes, Member Sands.
Mr. President, I just want to emphasize that these are positions that were not funded.
Yeah.
Not
in the
budgeted.
current- Not budgeted in this current year, so.
Not to be
we're not-
confused with layoffs. There are no layoffs
No, there are no
here.
layoffs. I never said that word.
No.
I wouldn't- I know
Because I
I
had
heard you just say it.
gotten a couple of emails from a local reporter, because I guess that phrase had been used. These were positions that have not been filled all year,
Or in the last couple of years.
in the last couple of years, that's correct. So anyway, it's just cleaning up the staffing ordinance. Okay, I think is a better way of phrasing it. I notice you have an emergency clause. You did not desire suspension.
The person administrator would like this to go into effect as soon as possible.
It's good, we can read it another time. I think we need to let the people talk to us
Yeah.
about our priorities. Those people
So
out there who want
we may
to.
suspend a second if there's really a
Yeah.
reason.
I mean, since we don't have money in the budget, what difference does it make?
On to ordinance 11608, an ordinance declaring certain vehicles no longer needed for a municipal purpose. Member Nisley, what are you getting rid of there?
Some city vehicles, which we began the discussion of last week. I just passed a spreadsheet out to some of you. I think Sherry and Debbie is filling a copy of this. And that will help, because I think 116 in your packet calls for the purchase. This spreadsheet that I'm passing around now will describe the disposition, getting rid of the other vehicles. And at the top of that, you'll see this is a memo from Street Department Director Andy Stone with the updated list of vehicles that we're requesting disposal of. To the list that we reviewed last week of the Street Department vehicles, he's added 1 police, 1 lands and building vehicle, and 3 code vehicles. So that would be 11 vehicles total from the city, requesting disposition of them, 6 of which would be from the Street Department. As he notes in the memo, he says this is decreasing the overall vehicle's fleet size by 7%, decreases the code fleet size by 37%, and the police fleet size by 6%. Last week you had a question about the total number of vehicles in the street department, to which he gave us an answer. There are 42 total vehicles in the street department, 6 of which on this list tonight are for disposition in the street department. And then we'll discuss in a few moments the reading of the next ordinance, which will talk about an addition of 3 vehicles to the street department. So that would, the 42 minus 6 plus 3 equals 39 is what the total size of the fleet will be. The other question that you had last week was about the justification for the new vehicles, and I will discuss that in just a few moments.
Further discussion on ordinance 116, Member Bain.
Chris, the one that's in the internal service fund, are we going to, that's a new addition, an expedition, is that right? Or is, did we?
Or is that the one that's going to be for general use?
Okay. And so is, is there a procedure here? I mean, when we sent them to auction, because they're public goods, and we're auctioning them off, sometimes we thought, well, maybe they'll go over X number of dollars. Has that all been vetted to make sure that there's no chance that the bids would go over? I mean, I'm sure there's somebody out there that would love to have those Crown Vics, but since they get about 3 miles to the gallon. But I guess I want to make sure that we don't have to release them or do anything else about them.
Okay.
I mean, I looked on e-government, and I didn't find it. Now, eBay, on governmental eBay, and I found out they had it in Germany, but I didn't find it anyplace else. So I guess I'd like a little bit more information on how they're going to be disposed of.
What the next steps are on that, and whether or not we need to be doing anything.
Because of potential. Yeah, we are missing an ordinance, I think.
Yeah.
And that would be the one with the list in it? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, thank you very much. I was thinking I was hallucinating. Okay, so maybe when we read it next time, we'll know that. And if we're going in a different direction, this would be the, not the first time we've moved in that direction, what the safeguards are to protect the public interest.
Okay.
Thank you.
We don't have.
Other comments on ordinance 116?
I know you don't. That's why I gave you this spreadsheet.
Mayor Weil.
Because that does list it.
So we don't have, we have a duplication of the ordinances, okay?
Yes, we apologize.
We liked it so much, we did it twice.
I think, if you notice, we're removing some of these vehicles, and I don't have the list in front of me. One's listed at $700, I think. So technically, I think abandonment of vehicles through council is at the $1,000 mark, if I remember correctly. Am I wrong on that?
No, I can't remember.
So therefore, really, we're assuming that these vehicles will go at least for $1,000. That's why they're in the list as is. We are looking for, trying to find a more efficient way of getting rid of the vehicles in terms of not having to go through auction or even a local auction. How well that works depends on, what we get for these vehicles, actually. So we'll be monitoring this. And I hope we have a list next week.
Other comments?
And more specificity on the process, too, please.
Okay.
I mean, since it is disposal of publicly funded items.
Ordinance 11708, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to purchase 2 3/4-ton trucks for the street department. Again, Member Nisley.
Yes, this ordinance, thank you, Mr. President. This ordinance would be for the purchase of 3 vehicles for the street department. In fact, that, in the spreadsheet, Street Director Stone does give an explanation. The purpose of the new vehicles is to replace similar vehicles that we are getting rid of. They'll be used for towing of trailers, carrying mowers or the skid steer, carrying asphalt patching equipment, and the small truck would be moving the small paint machine and other tasks where a small truck is required. And so this would be for purchase of a 3/4-ton pickup with lift gate, 3/4-ton pickup diesel with the external fuel tank, and the compact utility truck.
Other comments on ordinance 117? Member Bain.
Chris, do we have, did we buy dump trucks for the street department earlier this year?
I don't know, and I'm not aware of any since I've come on council. Now, we are in the process of getting rid of 2 bucket trucks.
Yes.
And putting together
I didn't even know we had 2 bucket trucks.
making the final arrangements for the equipment that's needed on a new bucket truck, and that's in the process.
Member Phillips, did you have a question? I'm sorry, I thought I saw your hand earlier. Other comments on ordinance 117? Ordinance 11808, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract to provide financial support for the operation of the Athens Area Chamber of Commerce. Member Phillips.
Mr. President, the first thing we need to do is amend this so that everywhere that it says Athens Area Chamber of Commerce, it should read Athens County Economic Development Council. So,
Is that a motion to amend?
Yes, please.
Second.
I think that in the emailing back and forth of the various versions of this, we ended up with the older one. So the entity, the new entity that's forming is the Athens County Economic Development Council.
Further discussion on the amendment only. All those in favor of the amendment as stated?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion, the ordinance has been amended and now read for the first time.
And if I
Now
may.
explain.
Yes. So we have traditionally had a contract with the Chamber of Commerce for economic development activity on behalf of the city of Athens. This is a new development in that there are some structural changes being made. A new organization, which will be a 501c3 nonprofit, is being created, and the business plan is attached to the contract. I think that this plan aligns very closely with a lot of the goals and the vision that were outlined in the city's comprehensive planning process. If you look at the sectors that are identified as being particularly strong areas for us to work on for economic development, I think it really does align very closely with a lot of the things that citizens have talked to us about in terms of what they would like to see. This is funded through the Tourism Fund, which comes into the city as the city's portion of the hotel motel tax. So this is not general revenue fund money. We can use that money for other things. We do fund the Convention and Visitors Bureau there, as well as some other specific projects. But the funding for this comes through the Tourism Fund. We've talked about it twice in committee, and I think that many members of council have also, and the administration, participated in meetings with the group as it's been working through this transitional process. I think this is a good partnership for us, and I think that it really does benefit the city. I'm very excited to see the opportunity for some closer work together with the county, the university, and some of the other economic development entities that are involved in this council.
Further discussion on ordinance 118. Yes,
Just
Member Nisley.
Clarification, we did look at a set of bylaws last week at the committee meeting, and the amount that was listed was 50,000? No? Okay.
That, the 50,000 is the amount that's required to be a full institutional member and have a seat as part of the executive council. But the budgeted amount that were in the budget projections was the 55,000, which is the level that we've been funding the chamber for the last several years.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Other comments? On to resolutions for third reading. Resolution 0808, a resolution establishing, quote, responsible contractor, end quote, bid criteria. While this has been introduced by all members of council, Member Gosney, I believe you speak to it.
I will speak to this. So this is a modification of city's bidding criteria. We first discussed this in the beginning of September in committee.
Move to adopt.
Sorry, yeah. I would like to move to adopt Resolution R0808.
Second.
So this is a resolution we first discussed in September and in committee, and we've had 3 readings on it now. It establishes 19 different criteria for bidders on city contracts that are required to go to bid. So any contracts over a certain size, I believe it's 25,000 right now, are required to be bid publicly. Some of the things that this asks for is that the contractor have a drug policy in place. It asks that they provide health care for their employees, and it's really a way to cover the city investment and make sure that our tax dollars on city projects are spent for quality work by quality contractors. There's also a criteria in here that, this is the last one in the list, that says that the bidders will utilize a workforce of predominantly local persons. So it's also a way to ensure that work done in the city is done by locals. And I do believe there are a number of people here tonight that are here to speak to this.
First, let's go to council. Members of council that wish to speak to Resolution 08. Member Phillips.
I think that we have some experience in the city of having had to go back and repair infrastructure projects that had not been done up to city specs. If you look at some of the paving that has had to occur on the south side in recent years, where we thought we were going in just to resurface and discovered that we needed to replace the base of the road in some places, and the experience that we had when we were asked to adopt Armitage Road last November, and we did core samples and found that the base had only been built to half of the city specifications. I view this as a way for us to be responsible with the taxpayer investment and make sure that we're not going to have to come back to the taxpayers to fix things that should have been done right the first time.
Other comments from council members? Member Bain.
We could add to the list the wonderful sinking pump station on Circle Drive, which displays a real problem for us in the future.
Other comments? Member Sands.
I agree that our goal here is to make sure that the city is dealing with responsible contractors, I have been talking to several people in the community, and there is some concern about the requirements toward the end of this list, requiring healthcare plans, retirement plans, and an apprenticeship program, none of which many small businesses, of which I'm an owner of a small business, are able to afford to offer to all their employees. So I'm not sure that these three requirements are getting us to the goal of having responsible contractors.
Is there further discussion by council members only? Member Gosnell.
Yes, Mr. President. I did forget to mention that in 2002, Athens, the County of Athens actually instituted a very similar policy. I'm not sure that they're following it entirely. I've heard conflicting stories, but they do have the same policies in effect that we're moving to adopt here.
Those in the audience wishing to speak to this resolution. Member Hayes. Member Hayes. Brent Hayes. Welcome.
Brent Hayes, contractor here in Athens. You know, I first saw this thing, I thought, gosh, is there some big project coming up, or has there been some problems? Now, I hear there's been a couple concerns. It sounds like those may have been from inspectors or engineers, or thinking maybe some bad geotechnical data, or you know, some. But I don't know, I've been doing this 25 or 30 years, I guess. But I get, if you to pick up an Athens phone book and go to contractors and look at your electrical contractors, your plumbers, your masonry contractors, your block layers, and just see how many of them, or call them, and see how many of them could comply with these 19 requirements that you have. We just done probably $4.5–5 million worth of work between the McBee building and the University Mall in Dunham's, and used almost all local contractors. We had a few specialty things, some fire protection, and we had a flat roof that we had to use now from Parkersburg. But gosh, we've had good luck with these guys, and keeping the money here in Athens, I think, is really important. You're keeping your contractors local, and I think it was number 19 on your list was the 60-mile radius. That's surely a good gesture. But there's, you know, we don't have time to go through all, but I think out of the 19 things, there was about 16 that we found were that need some additional wording or less wording, and I'm not sure, you know, when you talk about this resolution, that the county does have something. I'm not sure what it is. We've just finished a paving project for the county on County Road 24, so obviously we were an acceptable, responsible contractor. I guess if you don't meet these 19 things, does that mean you're not a responsible contractor? And if you're not a responsible contractor, like Mr. Sand says, he's got a florist. If he can't do this, is he a responsible florist? Or do we have responsible people that own restaurants? I mean, where does it go from here? If you're saying, you know, if they're not responsible, can we get food poisoning from these people if they don't meet this, or bad flowers or something? So, I mean, and when there's projects that's done within the city that's over this $25,000 threshold, it's what they call prevailing wage. So the contractor has to pay the same wages, the scale wages to his employees. And the difference is if they're a non-union contractor, for an operator, for an example, if he were union, he would have money taken out of his paycheck and would go to these benefits. For the hour and wage, it would be $6.31 per hour he worked would come out. And for the pension or the retirement, it'd be $4 an hour. And then there's 50 cents for an apprentice training and 4 cents for other. Our employees, we've talked about this, and they like to get that money, and they get that money, and spend it as they see fit or invest it as they see fit. Now, I'm not sure how many of them have insurance or their spouses do, but that's really not our business. That's their money, and we're not going to tell them how to spend it for sure. As far as there was one, I don't think anybody mentioned it, the bonding said it had to be an A-rated company, and I wasn't sure about that, so I referred that question to my bonding agent. He said, in light of the recent financial situation, AIG and things, that there's been a lot of downgrades. He said, you'll probably be hard-pressed to find an A-rated company. His analogy was when you were in high school, and an A in algebra was pretty good, but an A- was good too. And I just don't know that there's been any problems with defaults on contractors, and if you do, that's what the bond's in place for. You go back to the bonding company if you've got a project that you've got issues with. The bonding company comes in and makes that makes that right. That's why you have the bond. That's why you're named as the the holder of that bond. There's also words in here about the subcontractors being bonded. And a lot of people can't get bonded. Bonding's very hard to get. In today's financial thing, it's even harder. But so a lot of these guys can't get bonded, but if they're working under a general contractor, then they don't have to be bonded. So to ask, the way this reads, all the subcontractors would have to be bonded. And I don't think that's the intent, or I've never seen that before. So I would like to ask that you consider tabling this thing, go through, tighten it up, and just see, do a survey of contractors you've used, your friends, the plumbers, the electricians, and see their feelings on it before this is passed. Thank you.
Thank you. Other people wishing to speak before council on this issue? Yes. Mr. Broadhurst, we have, I'm sorry. That gentleman was up first, if you'd like to come first.
Ted Linscott.
Yeah, Ted.
Township trustee.
You could state your name and try to keep it to 3 minutes.
Yeah, I'm Ted Linscott here. I live here in Athens. We're just outside of town. I think the intention here of an ordinance such as this is to try to give the city a tool to be able to have a little discretion on their part to when they do put out a job to bid and accept bids from contractors and such. For lack of a better term, the construction business a lot of times is like a game. It's you've got to set criteria out there with blueprints and a spec book, and say, well, tell us what you'll build this for. And what we're trying to do is try to raise the level in our community, is where some of the people that in the community have a chance to better themselves and be provided with the health insurance and the pensions and things like that when you want to argue that. But the point I'm trying to make is when you're bidding a job, it says lowest and best bid. Okay, well, what we've gotten into over the years is when the bids come in, the low bid is always the one that is taken because there is nothing there to give the city or the county or the township or whoever any kind of rules to go by to what is a bid that might be better or worse than another one, especially when you're talking about price. We all know we can go down to the store and we can buy a shirt that was made pretty cheap, and then we're going to get it for a cheap price, and it's not going to last very long. Okay, or you can spend a little bit more and buy a little higher price shirt, and it's going to last you a while, and something you might have for several years. But when a city or a government entity decides to build a school or to build a road, it's an investment in your community. And when you're using taxpayer dollars, we have a responsibility to use those, to be good stewards of those taxpayer dollars, and to make sure that the city is getting the best bang for their buck. It's a combination package. It takes a quality job, a quality contractor, and quality workmen to do the job, or people, craftsmen to do the job. And when you're talking about the apprenticeship and training programs, those are the kind of things that we so desperately need to replace our aging workforce. We have to get the new blood into the business. Our construction business is not a very attractive business for a lot of these younger kids out there now. And we do a lot of recruiting, and it's hard to get the quality type people that we're wanting to get. Apprenticeship, a registered apprenticeship through the state of Ohio, is a time-proven system to train new construction workers, and not only just construction workers, but all kinds of workers. And when you're talking about an apprentice program, you're making an investment there into your future. So from what I read on this, I don't see anything on this bill whatsoever or this resolution whatsoever that would hold anybody back from bidding. It doesn't exclude anyone whatsoever. It does expect them to meet certain standards to be eligible to bid and to build a project for our community. But I just urge you to go ahead and get this one passed.
Thank you, Mr. Linscott. Other people wishing to speak on this issue? Mr. Broadhurst.
Greg Broadhurst, 14 Granville. I guess the gentleman spoke before me pretty much said it all, but I have to say, as a resident of Granville Avenue and having had experience with certain contract activities that the city has previously been engaged with or in that didn't work out so well, I wholeheartedly support this resolution. And you know, it's hey, you know, it's about free enterprise, right? So it's not extraordinary to expect a good return on your investment. I happen to have, my street is actually being worked on right now, and there's an opening in the street, and I was happening to talk to the contractor. And I looked, I said, what is that? I mean, that top layer, he said, well, that's where somebody basically threw blacktop, whoever had resurfaced the street before, threw blacktop down on top of gravel and didn't pay any attention to it. He said, he said, I found rocks on top of gas lines. And he said he had to, be careful where he was moving because he didn't know what he was going to come across in terms of potential breakage. So, without too much further comment, I encourage council to pass this resolution, and I would hope that also we would encourage, with the agencies that we have, the educational institutions, to promote apprenticeship programs, and even that the city might be involved in something like that within their departments to save money. Thank you.
Others wishing to speak? Yes, sir. You can state your name.
My name is Brian Ogle. I'm here representing the Athens Builders Industry Association. I'm also a owner of a local construction company. We don't work on any government projects, but as a representative of the Athens BIA, I wanted to speak to you guys tonight. We completely agree with having responsible legal contractors in Athens. This was a conversation that just came up 2 weeks ago, just in the sense that working for residential and private commercial projects. So we do support the generic idea of a responsible contractor. We do have some concerns with particular items in there, and I know this isn't the exact forum to try to get to the bottom of everything and find some other options. And really what we're asking is some time, and obviously I know this is the third reading, and maybe some information came to us late from in the paper, and then we found out. But we would like to work hand in hand with anyone, and I know Councilperson Gosney, we talked a little bit about this, and would like to look at this, but we would like to find a way to address some of these concerns, because we don't want to limit this to restricting maybe some small businesses that can't, that don't have the budgets or some of these other pieces. We completely understand the workmanship has to be there, but some of these pieces we found as restrictive in a sense. And, with this economic climate, keeping the small businesses in Athens, still moving along, and restricting them just adds another obstacle that I think is not something that, should be the result of this. So that's all I have, and I appreciate, your consideration on that, and would be glad to, talk to anyone after the council meeting. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak before council? Yes.
Mr. President, excuse me, I got a cold, so my voice is a little weak right now. My name is Troy Farrell. I'm the president of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, and Athens County is one of the counties that I represent and have members living in. We fully support this resolution, or these 19 points on this resolution, and we see it as a benefit to the community of Athens, or any community that would adopt these points, which there have been several, including, like was mentioned before, the Athens County Commissioners. I know it could be debated that this could be a union, non-union issue, but it is. I assure you that it is not a union, non-union issue. There are many, and many comments, or a few comments were made about the restriction of small businesses under this resolution, what the effect it would have on small businesses. And I assure you that there are many small businesses, including 4 that we do business with, that are contractors that employ anywhere from 1, 2 to 10 to 15 employees, and that varies on the size of their work. Force Electric, Axis Electric, MJJ Electric, and right here in the Athens County area, Hocking Valley Electric, and they do and would meet the standards of this bid criteria. So I assure you that small businesses can and do work under these standards, and are able to do business. Just a couple of short things. Prevailing wage is set by the area standards. It doesn't. It's already determined and set, and you guys are paying prevailing wage on your larger projects. You still have some smaller projects that will not fall under the prevailing wage standards. But you're already paying the prevailing wage on your larger projects, so we feel that you should get the best value for the money that you're spending. We feel things like a registered apprenticeship program, that investment, as you heard, you're already paying the cost, but it's not a large investment. Some local apprenticeship programs, both through the ABC and through the labor unions, cost their members as little as 36 cents an hour is what we put in. So these are minimal expenses that you're already paying for, but not everybody's taking advantage of. And if taken advantage of, it not only raises the skill level of the employees working in the area, their productivity level rises as well, and it makes an overall better skilled worker. So we feel that registered apprenticeship programs are very important to the community, and would be an investment that I would encourage every contractor to take part in. Healthcare and pensions, those are 2 major issues that even go as far as our presidential election this year. Where do we draw the line on healthcare? That's an answer that will be, we're all going to have to battle out over the next few years. But these are things that help your community in the long run. It's an investment that you guys are already paying for. You might as well get the best bang for your buck and ask that contractors, have those things in there. So I ask that you support this resolution, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, sir. Others wishing?
Good evening. My name's John Green, Athens County resident. One thing I think that a lot of people is kind of overseeing in this, but this gives you, on a legal standpoint, if you put a job out to bid and you get a lowball number from a contractor, this criteria can give you the right to throw that contract out legally. If you don't meet any of these criteria. I've seen this time and time again, a lowball contractor come in and lowball job to get it, but with no criteria involved, then the overruns go through the roof at the other end. This gives you right up front, these 19 points, that this contractor, if he abides by these, he's a good contractor. And that's what this is stating. Because we have contractors out here that, they fly in here tonight, give you a bid, and when the job's gone, they disappear and you never see them again. So I hope you look at that, and it does give you a bind, and it also gives you an out. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there others, please?
I am Bill Terman. I'm also an Athens resident and also a member of the Athens Building Industries Association. And as you can see, you've got a resolution on board there. There's a lot of different opinions on, and I think what Brian worded it properly, that we just asked it to be tabled so that we have some discussions. There's some obvious points about this. And myself as a contractor, I want to state this, that of all these resolutions, my company complies to all but maybe one. My employees have health insurance. My employees have a retirement plan. Now, it was not an entitlement for them. They earned it, and it was a responsibility for me to give it to them. But I gave it to them as a pay. So, the only question I would have that I wouldn't comply to is that because I've been hiring men from this area for 29, 30 years, that the employees that I've had for 20 years or so that have worked their way up through my program, through my business, have not gone through a apprenticeship program other than my apprenticeship program, 30 years experience in building. So I could comply to everything here except the fact that I would have to verify that all my people came through a registered apprenticeship program. There's just some little things that need to be tabled. I think as a whole, we commend council for bringing something together and deciding that we need some quality building in Athens. And we formed an association to say the same thing. I just want you to look at it very hard.
Others wishing to speak? Yes, sir.
Ben Stolzfus Family Construction. And I think there are 3 items on here that you should look at. Number 15, bidder and all subcontract bidders certify the bidder provides a minimum health care program, medical plan for those employees working on this project. I contacted my CPA about 2 months ago, and I told him that I would be interested in doing something like that, and he said a business your size can't afford to do it, so he said don't do it. So number 1, you're going to wipe some small businesses out or hurt them by doing this. You need to look at this again. Also, that they contribute to an employee pension or retirement program. That takes a lot of money. I do a lot of work for the city, and what it would mean, I would have to raise my prices to the city so that I could afford to do that. And then also, I think it's kind of interesting that they shall have a bona fide or registered apprenticeship program. I have 4 sons. 2 of them are working for me. One full-time, one's going to school working part-time, and the other one's working part-time. Those are my apprenticeship. I have 2 sons that are off in the construction business because they started working as little boys and working with their father here in the city of Athens. Just because I don't meet all these requirements, does that mean I'm not a good contractor? And another thing that I think is really interesting here is I do curb work for the city. There is one type of curb that I do that I actually don't make any money on, but there's a cap there. I can only bid it so high. And my question is, if I stop doing it, who's going to do it? I have been told, not recently, a number of years ago, that I may want to refigure my prices because somebody else is thinking about bidding into doing the city's work. And my comment always is, let them do the city's work. I enjoy working with the city, I really do. But I don't have to have the city's work. And if you can find somebody that's going to do the city's work for less than I do it for, that's fine. And for most of these, I really don't have an issue with, but I do think you really need to look at what you're forcing the small businessman or asking the small businessman to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stolfitz. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this issue? Yes, sir.
Matt Geiser of the Plains, Ohio. I would just like to reiterate some of the stuff that was said tonight. I think that Mr. Ogle, Mr. Hayes, and a couple others, the concerns they've brought up, I hear council, I hear Mrs. Bain, Mrs. Phelps say things about projects that we've had concerns about, whether that was workmanship or geological data, that's up for debate. But the issues that are being brought up are health care, pensions, and things that I think that it would be good for City Council to look at and say, are those really what would dictate a responsible contractor? And does that have anything to do with the quality of work? And if there's some study out there that shows that contractors that provide health care and pensions do better quality work, I think that would be a valuable piece of information, but I don't believe it's out there. And also the request is that this be tabled for discussion. It's not asked that you vote it down. I just think that it would be a wise and responsible thing for council to table it based on the concerns here tonight and review it and talk to the Builders Association. And I would just like to support their comments in that.
Others wishing to speak? Yes, sir.
I'm Ken Ryan. I'm an attorney here in Athens, and I live in Coolville, and our office represents a fair number of contractors and builders, and I also support the notion that this matter be tabled, at least for reconsideration. And one of the issues that I've had looking over this is whether the enforceability issues I think need to be a little bit addressed better and a little bit clarified more. There are just some certain terms that are within this ordinance that lack definition and are going to allow for a broad amount of discretion that would make it very difficult for a contractor to know whether or not he or she is complying with this law. And then also to the issue of whether some of the decisions that are going to be made in here, if there is authority for those that are going to be making those decisions, who's going to be making those decisions, and whether or not those decisions are going to be appealable. I think this ordinance, while the intention is certainly admirable, and holding the public's trust is, a very awesome duty for a council. I think that there are just a number of issues within this ordinance as it is currently written that ought to be addressed, and hopefully tabling that and conferring with some of the local contractors and business community would be able to clarify that and make this a strong law and one that would be a little clearer and easily enforced. Thank you.
Who else would like to speak before council? Seeing no others, we have a motion and a second for adoption of Resolution 0808. Any other motions? All those in favor of adoption of the resolution? Yes.
Other motion? I thought we had to deal with this one first.
Motion to adopt would take precedence.
Motion to adopt, yeah.
I misunderstood you.
Yeah, yeah. All those in favor of adoption of Resolution 0808?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
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 4-3.
4-3 to adopt. Can we have a show of hands? Those that were in favor? Those that were opposed? Okay.
Looks like we still need to discuss some more.
I'm sorry?
Nothing. Okay, we need to have a discussion on this one too, maybe.
Okay. On to announcements and other business. Committee meetings for next time or other announcements? Yes.
I just want to announce that we've had some discussion about the need to look at the land development ordinance. Several people have expressed an interest in serving as part of a task force. Paul Logue, the city planner, is willing to lead that task force. I think that Member Gosney, Muriel Grimm, and Delia Rapp have expressed interest to me, and that Paul reached out to Jennifer Simon, and she's going to get back to him with some representatives from the business community to be part of that task force to look at that ordinance and some of the issues that we've had with the way it's currently written.
Very good, thank you.
Anybody else in the public who's interested in serving, please get in touch with Paul Logue.
Okay. Committee meetings for next time. Member Bain.
Utilities and budget and,
Yeah.
we'll be handing out assignments next time.
Well,
We'll have, if you have anything specific you want, let us know.
Member Gosney.
I will need a committee meeting next week.
And I will need a transportation committee meeting next week.
Okay. Any other announcements? Next item is an opportunity for citizens to speak on legislative items and city services that we did not cover on tonight's agenda. Okay. We can,
I can, but that would be,
Well-
I'm going to go with city council. That's,
okay. I'm jumping back to announcements here for just a second. The clerk reminded me of something that I should do. We can make you our voting delegate, and if you choose not to attend, then it would not be a problem. But
National League of Cities.
yeah, the National League of Cities, Congress of Cities voting delegate, in the past, traditionally, the law director has attended and has been empowered to be the voting delegate. Could I have a motion to make Patrick Lang, our law director, the voting delegate? He may or may not go.
so moved.
Second.
Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations.
Great.
You get one more
Always wanted to be a
assignment.
voting delegate.
You're a voting delegate should you choose to go. What do you need now? Okay. Back to an opportunity for citizens to speak on any legislative items or city services that were not covered on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone else wishing to speak before council on any other issues? Seeing none and having addressed all items on our agenda, we stand adjourned.